Okay, now we're going to take a look at hitting. Hitting is also a very complex skill, but yet it's very simple once you get all of the actions down, but they all happen in sequence. From the foot, to the hips, to the shoulders, to the arm, to the wrist, and so on. Elbow and then wrist. All of them play a role. There are even other actions that occur, but these should suffice for right now. Now, just like in pitching, you'll see many similarities between hitting and pitching. This is why I often say that pitchers and all pitchers should also be good hitters, because they will have the muscles mainly responsible for hitting well developed, just like a hitter does. But of course we don't see this because they don't really practice, the pitchers, or pitchers don't do a lot of hitting practice. But if they did, I think they could be almost as good as some of the hitters. Okay, so here's a youngster, high school youngster, who shows a couple of things that are interesting on his hitting technique. But rather than going through the whole thing, we're just going to take a look at one aspect, and that's the very beginning of it, the stride. How does he push off? What happens in his stride? The stride is what sets him up for all of the other actions. And if you have a good stride, it contributes considerable force. If your stride is weak, you don't give as much force into the head, unless you're using steroids, which we're not going to talk about, and I hope no one is using, because you don't need them. You could be equally as good without them. But with steroids, forget about it. Nothing goes in terms of technique. It doesn't matter what the heck you do. You get enough strength and you're going to be lucky to hit the ball. That's why your steroid users, they may hit many home runs. They also have maximum strikeouts. They have more strikeouts than the average hitter. Okay, now we're going to be hitting for average, which means we're looking to get more base hits rather than home runs. So if we take a look at his stride now, it's basically has his weight more or less back. He's got an exceptionally long stance, or wide stance. There's no need for such a wide stance. Could be a lot less, mainly because you're going to go into motion. You want to shift your hips forward. That means there's going to be movement. So why start off with a wide stance that makes you stable? Get your feet a little closer. Then when you push off, you can generate some force. But if you're already wide, you can't go very far, so you can't get much force. Now you may be very more stable if you have a wide stance, but then forget about any kind of a stride. It's not going to help you. But a stride is important. It'll contribute great force. So what does he do? See, he has to unweight the foot. That's what happens when you're in a long or wide stride. He has to push the weight back, raise the leg, and now he's going to be moving it forward. But see, he moved the leg before he moved the hips. Let me back up a little bit. Notice how the foot goes up. He's reaching out with the foot simultaneously with the hips moving forward. But if you want to get force into it, don't lead with the foot. You have to lead with the hips. Once you lead with the hips, then you step out with the leg. But see, his leg is already so far out in front, there's no way in the world he can do that. So that's where I would say this is a very inefficient technique, to start off with such a wide stance. Let's follow up a little bit more. See, the hips are now coming forward. He's striding forward. And look at the way he had to bring his foot back. So he brought the foot all the way out, and now he's got to bring it back. That's wasted action, wasted time. Once you stride, your leg goes out, plant it, and that's it, you're ready to go. Then you even twist the foot around a little bit. Then he goes into his swing. Okay, so we see the stride is basically somewhat inefficient. So he still comes in, but the weight is now more or less equally distributed between both feet. So this is a positive feature. We don't see the weight going back, beginning his swing, but the weight is more or less staying central. Okay, we'll take a look at a couple other players to show a comparison of the different techniques. But one thing that's important to bring out here, if you want to have a strong stride, see, when you're all the way back here, when he initiates the stride forward, it's the muscles on the side of the hip that are doing the initiating. So we want to strengthen these muscles. By contracting these muscles, think in terms of driving the hips forward, not of extending the leg or other factors. Contract them to drive the hips. Your legs don't have to do anything. It's all in the hip joint. And as we're going to see later on, not only is it a hip joint, the weight transferred forward, but also the hip rotation that's going to make a difference. So by developing these muscles, and to do that we do an exercise with active cords called hip abduction. Have a straight leg and pulling it out to the side. That's a basic exercise that you can do more or less anywhere. But to make it more specific to the hitting and the stride, we use the active cords belt, putting it around the hips, and then attaching a rubber tubing up against the fence. You don't have to be at the mount, but you can go up against the fence here, attach the tubing, and then you can work on just shifting the hips forward. So that'll give you a more forceful stride. And you can even work on the legs being a little closer together. And as you do the exercise, you can develop a better feel for a more effective stride. So it becomes very effective. Not only do you get strength, but you develop a good muscle feel. Okay, we'll take a look at another player and see what differences we can see.